Welcome YouTube, it's Chobra, and today we are going to make our Masters Toronto tier list. A little bit early tier list, because quite frankly in the weeks leading up to it I might go back and review some VODs and decide I might want to change my mind, and also it's just hard to tell because we have a brand new patch coming into Masters Toronto. So not only will we have the new map pool with Sunset coming in and Fracture being taken out, but Euro got a slight nerf, and of course the big one, Taeho, is absolutely nerfed. So this should change the entire meta. So we're going to do a little guesswork on how I think teams might adapt to the upcoming meta, whatever that may be. But hey, we just wrapped up stage 1. Thankfully now all of EMEA also finished, so let's go ahead through our impressions of each team all throughout stage 1 and see how they stack up against each other. Well, without further ado, let's jump right in. So as you can see on your screens, we're gonna have 4 different tiers here for the 12 teams at Masters Toronto. So at the very top you have favorites. This basically means I think these teams should be winning Masters Toronto. And why? Well, mostly because of what we saw in stage 1, right? I just think they had really good prep. They've got the firepower, they've got the X factor, right? They've got really clutch players. They've got some real good star power as well. But also, in addition to that, they know how to work around the meta. They clearly built towards something that worked for their team. They put in the extra time. They had some ante. And also, maybe historically, the coaching staff or the players have showcased that they are going to be pretty quick to pick up on new metas, because I think, again, that's going to be a very big part for Masters Toronto. So all of that combined, right? The strength that we saw in stage 1, but also how quickly do I expect them to be able to adapt going into a brand new meta and deciding what's best for them in that short amount of time. Then you've got trophy contenders. Basically, these are going to be the teams that are similar to the favorites, right? That performed quite well during stage 1, that at some point in stage 1, I thought, okay, this team might be a favorite, but maybe they're missing 1 or 2 parts, right? Maybe they've got a couple slow starters, or maybe the entire team always tends to be a little slow on map 1. Maybe it's a team where I'm just not quite sure if they're going to be able to catch on to a new meta, define it for themselves at an international event. Then the third tier is going to be playoffs guarantees. Basically, I mean, sturdy teams, right? These are teams that have all the basics. They're really solid. They've got just good game plans. They have a history of it. Maybe they've just got really strong players. Whatever it is, I think these teams are going to get a couple W's, but I'm not quite sure that they're going to be able to make a run all the way to the end. And then at the very bottom, you have the maple syrup tier. Not because maple syrup is bad, that's not what I'm saying, but these are the teams that are probably just going to be in Toronto enjoying the food and whatever Toronto has to offer. Now, it should be noted that, as always, when it comes to a Masters or a Champions event, all the teams are really good. They got there because they were good. They got there because they won in their own region, right? They got top 3, top 4, depending on the size of the event. None of the teams are bad. And quite frankly, I actually think this event, we don't really have a bad team. Like some events in the past, we've had 1 or 2. But here at Masters Toronto, I don't think we have it that much, but we do just have a little bit of a difference between obviously the top of the tier and then the bottom of the tier. So let's get started. We're going to start with China, and let's go in order. XLG, there's a lot of hype around XLG and how they're going to do. Obviously, the new Ascension team in China, and then they won stage 1. The first non-EADG winner was actually the brand new Ascension team. They have a really solid team. I mean, first of all, now you've probably heard the name Rarga, right? The star duelist. He's been fragging out ever since, but I gotta say, throughout stage 1, they actually finally transitioned into being able to play more as a team. In the past, it was kind of like Rarga go kill and then the other 4 kind of figuring things out on their own. That's what it felt like when I was watching their games, but especially towards playoffs and onward, it really felt like, okay, we're going to work around Rarga now. We're going to make sure we utilize Rarga's firepower to the team's benefit every single time, like making sure that you added value to the fragging. So that's great. They seem to have pretty good calling. They have very solid prep, and a lot of people have noted that this team is probably the closest team in China to playing very good textbook, good fundamental Valorant. Now, the only thing about XLG is that they are facing a bit of a roster change. So YOU is no longer with the team. YOU was the player that I would consider was kind of their primary sentinel. They have a lot of different flexing going on, like Happy Way plays the Cypher or the Vice a lot of the times, things like that. But usually if it's going to be, double Senti or the Killjoy, YOU was seen playing it. But he was also kind of the main breach for this team on a lot of the different maps. And he will no longer be with the team. And so I assume they'll just be playing with Martin, who is a sub who has been on the roster. He just actually filled in for Happy Way at the ACL event here in Asia. So, it's not like it's going to be something too crazy. It's not like they should be scrambling for a new player. I mean, maybe they will, but they have a sub. So it's not the end of the world, but that is a change, right? Now you got to rework through comms, even if they've been sitting in on scrims, things like that. You got to make sure that the roles are right. You got to make sure the comps are working out. Now, maybe to their benefit, the patch is going to be new, so it's not too crazy. But I do wonder. Now, for fans of XOG, you should rest assured that Martin actually played quite well at the ACL. Individually, he was doing his work, right? He was putting the work in. He was putting the numbers up. He was top fragging on some of the maps. So I don't think there's any concern for like, wow, this is a downgrade. Because quite frankly, I wouldn't say that YOU was like a strong core of XOG. However, I do think what YOU brought was that he would clutch some really important rounds for XOG. So now when those moments come, right, when it's kind of you need that clutch, you need to make the turnaround, the swing round happen, is Martin going to have the same impact, or will someone else be stepping up? They're all capable of it. Very talented squad. But I do wonder just overall, sometimes just some people have that role, right? They just have that atmosphere. They just take it upon themselves to be able to bring that out. Every team kind of has one. And I just wonder who's going to be that next one, because YOU to me was that one guy. Like if they're losing, I'm looking at YOU and I'm thinking, okay, what can you do? Which round can you bring back for SLG? But again, it's just a bit of a question mark, right? I mean, they're not going to be at full power. And even then, this is their first international event. I mean, yes, they won in China, but they're an Ascension team that hasn't really had as much exposure. And so you have to wonder, will they be able to put up the same performances? And then you got to take into account that they're also going right into the playoff stage because they're the first seed. So they will not have time to iterate, to get used to the stage, to take one loss but bounce back, things like that. You're going right into a double LM bracket. And yes, you still have a lower bracket, but if you're not able to lock in right away from the get-go, you're facing teams that just battled through the Swiss stage, right? You're facing not only good teams that just proved themselves, but also they've got to test their own ideas on the new patch, on the live stage. So I think XOG might have a little bit of trouble there. Now, this isn't a team that I think, struggles with prep or anything like that. I think they have all the right pieces. I just don't know if they have the right circumstance this event to do something great. So I'm just going to say playoffs guarantees, which actually, funnily enough, makes sense because they are literally guaranteed for playoffs. Next up, we have BLG, Billy Gaming. Okay, so if you watch my stream or you follow along with any of my watch parties, then you will know that I am a bit of a Billy hater. Now, hate is a strong word, but it's as close as I get to hate watching any team. And here's why. It's because I would actually consider I'm one of the OG BLG fans. I used to like Billy Gaming before they appeared on the first international stage. I loved what they brought. They had YZ, the explosive duelist. They had their own color. They had their own style of whimsy. YZ was flying around with the judge all the time. It was great. And then, of course, they made the big splash on the international stage. And ever since then, people have been a fan of their colors, which is great. Now, the thing is the current BLG, obviously a couple roster changes on the way, but I would argue has gotten better. Like, if I were to give them a numerical score, it would be higher than in the past. However, I still feel that they're kind of in transition. They haven't really settled on a final form, right? I'm not feeling that you're close to like a G2 style, clean textbook, very perfect theory Valorant. I'm not feeling that from you. I'm not feeling like a 2024 Gen G, right? Very contact play based, a strong default, and then playing by the numbers. I'm not really seeing that. I'm not seeing the W gaming. I'm not seeing like crazy anti. I'm just seeing pretty good Valorant across the board, and that's about it. And quite frankly, especially on an international stage, I don't think that gets you very far because you're playing against teams that had something special. Most of them had something special. That's why they're there. But you're here because being pretty good was good enough for your region. I mean, no offense, but let's be honest, the average play is still behind in VCT China. I am a little bit disappointed in BLG. I think that's why I'm always a little bit upset when I watch them. Now, of course, if you follow me on the stream, then you'll know that they cost me a little face paint. So I will be face painting my face with Billy colors on their very first match. But that doesn't mean I think they're going to do well. I just lost a wager with chat on the fact that I thought EDG's plot armor would be strong enough for BLG, but now it's gotten too weak. So, yeah, they're here, but I'm not really seeing them doing anything. And some of the Korean fans are going to be watching this and be like, wow, do you not support Coach Bile? No, I wish the best for Coach Bile, but I just think his players aren't quite there yet. I think he's doing great work trying to transition them into better fundamentals and understanding the theory of the game and all of that. But sometimes, like, if you watch their games, even the timeouts, they feel very laborious, right? It feels like it takes a lot of effort for the execution to come through and for the vision to actually happen. So while they are second seed, I am putting them in the maple syrup tier. Now, what does that mean for the third seed of VCT China, Wolves? They're in the maple syrup tier. Listen, I went back and watched some of the VODs again, right? Because I didn't watch all of the playoff games very closely for Wolves. I honestly, I don't know what to feel about this team. And it's not because TMV likes them. That, even before that, I'm not quite sure. I'm not seeing any very consistent color. And it could be there. It could be like hidden under poor execution. And maybe I'm not seeing it, but that means that there's poor execution. There's not much that's egregiously bad. They have some solid players, right? I think Wolves gets by with a very, very talented roster. I think they all have moments where they can pop off. I do like that they've started settling a little bit more into roles that are comfortable for them, but now they got to figure that all out again on a new meta. So I wonder if they're even going to have big changes in their comps, and if not, I mean, again, look at the rest of the teams that we haven't. By the way, Paper X is here. They're just hidden because their logo is all black on this one. You see the players that are going to be on this roster at the bottom here. I mean, you're not going to get by with just firepower. So, unfortunately, I don't have much more to say. So Wolves is going to be in the maple syrup tier alongside with Billy. All right, next, let's talk EMEA. Okay, EMEA. Let's just go down the line as we have done. Fnatic. So they lift the trophy. They lift a good-looking trophy. I know, rare sighting for Fnatic. And with that, I'm going to put them in my favorites. Is there a little bit of bias? Yes, because I was a big fan of Fnatic, I mean, all throughout, but also this iteration of the roster. I was very excited when Crashies was announced to be joining the roster. I was very hyped about all of the hype around Kayak, all of that. And yeah, they maybe weren't as strong in the start, but I've had faith that over time that they would bring it together. And quite frankly, I think they outperformed all of my expectations. I wanted them and I thought they could go to Masters Toronto, right? I was like, yeah, no, I could even see them in the grand finals of EMEA, but I did not expect them to look quite so dominant and riding the momentum so hard during playoffs all the way to, I would say, win EMEA fairly dominantly. I'm not going to say that the finals was one-sided because I actually think that Heretics really put up a fight other than that first map. But therefore, that makes me rate Fnatic even higher. And so I am going to go ahead and say that they are going to be my favorites. Now, the biggest question mark for me is, does Kayak need time again to warm up and settle in? Or is that now done, right? Because one of the biggest, I guess, weaknesses you could say for Fnatic throughout stage one was that Kayak sometimes had these games where he would be really slow to start and he would need the op to gain that confidence back. And you listen to the comms and it was great to see that the players were all, during replays and stuff, kind of cheering him on and making sure he was comfortable, but they kind of needed that, right? Everyone needed to focus on Kayak and be like, hey, you do you. You want the op? Get the op. We'll give you your space and you can do your thing and get back into the game. Now, going into playoffs, they didn't need to do that anymore. I mean, Kayak starts firing on all cylinders right off the get-go. I mean, look at the grand finals. I mean, dude just kicks it off with all the frags in the world. And if he can do that, like, I'm not saying just the numbers, but if he can play that confidently and match all these other star players beat for beat, then I don't have too much I'm worried about. I would say that, yeah, there's still some moments where Fnatic seems a little bit raw, right, with Kayak and even Alpha here, who's obviously not a rookie. Like, he's got quite the experience now, but you can still tell kind of just the youngster in him. He wants to go out and just take fights, things like that. But it seems like they're in a good spot now where they can use that to their advantage. I think Crashies has adjusted very well now to the team. It seems like he's enabled them quite well. Obviously Chronicle Boaster, and Boaster's having some of the best Valorant he's ever played. I mean, the calling's back in prime form, but then his aim, I would say, is the best it's ever been, and maybe going to just get better and better. So huge props to that. And then the coaching staff as well. So I just think that this team looks good. It feels like they figured out their color. It feels like they figured out, okay, what makes Fnatic, right? You've got that star duelist. You're able to play double duelist, but you've got quite the flexibility. The calls are very good coming in from both. Some people will say, okay, well, what about the Tejo? I would say, I mean, first of all, a lot of the maps you can Silva's still going to be really, really good. And then you can go back to things like KO Gecko. So I think Crashy should be fine, or even the Fade on some of these maps. So I think Crashy should be just fine, especially if you're going to be using the Sova. Obviously, he's a Sova main. So I'm not too worried about that either. I don't think they'll be like the craziest adaptations in terms of comp, but I think they'll have all the comfort rules they need. Next up, it's going to be Team Heretics, an unfortunate second place here for Team Heretics, not able to overcome Fnatic. And I think this is going to be the spicy one. I think a lot of people will probably still put them in the favorites just because they're really, really solid. But also their logo is a little bit cut off, so apologies to Team Heretics. But I am going to put them in the trophy contenders. And here's the big part. I actually have a lot of faith in the coaching staff of Team Heretics. They've always done a very good job. Obviously, they're one of the most consistent teams we have right now in VCT. But I think they still struggle a little bit to find their comfort with comps. I feel like you have a really, really talented roster. I feel you have fairly good flexibility, and yet it feels like it's a little bit in flux sometimes, right? Whether it's the double duelist or is it not, right? If you're playing initiator, are you playing it aggressive? Are you not? Is it info-based, contact-based? Now, I will say some people I don't think give enough credit for the IGLing or the prep or anything like that when it comes to Team Heretics. I give a lot of credit to Boo. I think Boo was one of the best IGLs we had last year. I mean, it was a pretty star-studded lineup of IGLs, but I think Boo was amongst those in 2024 and continues to be in 2025. I think Mini Boo looks great. It's exciting to see Mini Boo now full focus, right? Full-time Valorant professional player is exciting. He was putting up the craziest games throughout all of stage one. Obviously the team again falls short in playoffs, but that's not the only reason. It's not because they got second place. To me, it's just the fact that, okay, if Fnatic can basically slap back on every single thing you're throwing at them, because I do feel like Heretics really tried to pull out all the stops, then I don't know if you're going to be a favorite to win it. Now, trophy contender means that I think you got a shot, but I do think there's a slight gap there. When it comes to the meta, though, it might actually work out for the better. For them, I think without the Tejo, you kind of just pick and choose which direction you want to go. Do you just want to maybe go full like double duelist? Do you want to go full double initiator or double controller, things like that? And then you just kind of try to copy paste that into most of the maps, and they should be okay. Obviously, very, very talented individuals. Benji, I think, had a little bit of an up and down, but the peaks are still there. So obviously, I think that's a very reliable form. And I am curious how Miniboo is going to do, because I do think that he will be among the best duelists at Masters Toronto. But is that enough to bring them across the board? Big questions. Of course, one player that I hadn't mentioned yet, because I mentioned everybody else, is Rienz, who I do think is one of the best initiators. But, well, actually, I think it might be even better, right, with Teo being gone. So Rienz might be able to shine even more now, right? Again, more Sova, more recon initiators coming back. We'll see how they work around that. But it's just something in my gut. I don't know. I don't feel comfy putting them quite at the favorites. Last but not least, Team Liquid. They ran out of gas. They ran out of gas in EMEA. And with that, I'm going to put them in playoffs guarantees. Still a very, very strong team. I mean, Nats alone might even make them a trophy contender. And that's not to say the others aren't good players. I mean, they are also a very, very talented lineup. And obviously players like Camo, I think, were popping off throughout stage one. And Kiko, ever since the beginning of the year, was putting up some of the crazier numbers. But it does seem like they slowly run out of gas. And I'll be honest, throughout playoffs and maybe most of stage one, I don't know if I really felt Patatek's impact as much as we used to throughout Patatek's career so far. Maybe that's just because the bar is too high, because he's always been such a high impact player. But I do wonder if that goes, if that moves up or down based on this meta shift. So I am a little bit curious how they're going to do that. Now, I do think, though, the reason they look good is, like, Nats does buy a lot of time for them. Like, Nats gets them a lot of rounds he shouldn't be, or like people normally shouldn't be getting. But because it's Nats, he is able to make those happen fairly consistently. And with that, I'm not saying that Nats is like single-handedly always carrying the entire team across the finish line, but he's buying enough time, right? He's getting just enough rounds, just enough econ for the team to finally get back into it. And if you're doing that and then running out of gas, I feel like it's going to be a little tough. Now, it also feels like Team Liquid is a team that benefits a lot from iterating. It seems like they are very good at adding things on bit by bit, week by week, fixing small mistakes week by week. It feels like bracket formats, just the back-to-back formats, don't do well for them. It seems like they struggle with those fast-paced adaptations, right? And that's what Masters is. So I think that might hold them back, especially when, again, you're not quite sure what you're getting into with the new patch. Moving on. Americas. Okay, no surprise, G2. Everybody thinks they're a favorite, whether you love them or hate them. I think you would still consider them a favorite to win. You might be hate watching them, but it's probably because you think they're going to win, and you personally don't want that to happen. I really like the G2 squad. I'm a big fan of the coaching staff as well. And to me, everyone keeps talking about how Trent is only playing Taeho, and therefore they're going to be weak because Taeho's getting nerfed. Taeho abusers. Taeho one-trick Trent. And I'm like, do we not remember that Trent was also just one of the best initiators that we've seen on other agents, right? He was an amazing Sova. Now, has he had some stinkers here and there, especially at international stages? Sure. Yeah. But, like, they're not winning because Trent's playing Taeho. I mean, also, just in general, the supporting cast of G2 are actually excellent fraggers. They just don't play with that in mind. They don't play like everybody frag, everybody trade. They maximize util value, which is why a lot of us consider them like the closest to perfect Valorant. And so when push comes to shove, they'll still frag out, they'll still clutch. But in the beginning, they don't need to, because that's not what they play around. Now, sometimes, I think we saw this maybe a little bit at Bangkok as well. Sometimes I think this does put a little bit of extra pressure on Jogamo, because everything's kind of being used to support the primary duelist. But also, they're just really good at it. And Jogamo is also a very talented duelist, where push comes to shove, he can kind of get out of dodge on his own and make something happen and create enough space. So I'm not too worried. And then on top of that, I feel like I'm a broken record because I've said this so many times in the past couple of weeks. Chat, they have Anders on their coaching staff. And I mean, yes, like I'm on good terms with Anders, but that's not why I'm glazing Anders. Anders is literally responsible for some of the comps that have just survived the test of time, right? He is literally the guy responsible for some of these comps that we know and love on some of these maps, like Lotus, like Old Fracture, things like that. This guy, his literal main job, the thing he's known for, is creating comps on new metas and being ahead of the curve. He's now on staff at G2. This is a team that is used to playing maximum value util. This is a team that is used to playing with good teamwork. This is a team that has a star duelist and amazing initiators and a great flex. And then you've got a sentinel player. Like, everything points to me that they will be just fine. In fact, I think they'll be leading the meta in some senses in Masters Toronto, because you've got a guy who's literally just crunching the theory and the number and all of that to say, okay, new map pool plus different agent changes, bam, here are your comps on all the maps, right? They're probably already all kind of set on what they're going to play. I think that's hard to beat. Yes, they choked the finals, but I mean, if we're going to count that, we can't make tier lists, right? Then we've got 3 teams that are just going to be stuck in trophy contenders forever. So to me, G2, it's looking real solid for them. Now, next up is going to be Sentinels. And I am a little torn on where to put Sentinels. Between favorites and trophy contenders, but to not overdo things, I'm going to put them, I mean, I know this kind of looks just a little too even and nice, clean cut, but I'm going to put them in trophy contenders instead of favorites. And quite frankly, and this might just be because I'm less familiar with them, just kind of always being result-based analysis when it comes to Sentinels. But to me, I'm not sure what to expect from them in the new meta. This is another team where they had one player playing a lot of Teo, right? Ever since Bangkok. And it was your IGL. And I think there's something to be looked at there for teams that had your IGL playing a lot of Teo, because I think what Teo allows you to do is it just gives you a lot more freedom, right? It's much easier to instantly send out your util. It used to have really long range. I think it just gave you less mental stack compared to some of the other agents and how you had to play it in order to get all the information and process it and call and be in the middle of the thick of things and things like that. So I do think that's going to kind of have to change fundamentally how you operate as a team. Now, obviously, they did it last year, so it's not that they can't do it. Maybe John QT goes back to playing more Sentinel. I think they have options. Obviously, they're a very talented crew, and I think it's possible, but I just don't know what to expect. To me, there's a big question mark there on how does this actually impact you, because I think for a team like Sentinels, it's not so much like the patch and the agents of like, ooh, this agent's good for them or this agent's bad for them. I mean, technically, Sunset should be good for them, right? They used to love playing Sunset. They used to be a really solid Sunset team. So on paper, there are these other things numerically that I think they'll be fine with, but it's the out of game stuff, right? Is this going to change how you have to go through your IGLing? Obviously, we don't know. Like, yeah, you can have the comms videos, things like that, but we don't really know the core system of how they were working through it whenever he was playing the Tejo. Now, how does that change? And to me, that's a pretty big question mark. But they're contenders because, I mean, they have players that can just get through. Also, it's great to see that Narrate seems a lot more comfortable now as well. Kind of not exactly the same, but similar to what I said about Kayak, it does seem like he's now really, really feeling good. So if he can continue that at Toronto, right, and not kind of reset and have to regain that confidence, they should be quite well off. Also, just want to give a shout out because the other players always get their shout outs, and I think recently everybody on Sentinels has, but like Bang's been banging here on Sentinels in stage 1. He has looked very impressive, so very curious to see how he's going to stack up against the international squads. Last but not least, from Americas, it is going to be MIBR. Now, I was really big on MIBR. I was pretty excited for the roster since the beginning, and then, ever since Verno joined. Obviously, the storyline of Verno, quite exciting, and they seem to be doing quite well, so I was pretty big on them. But then I realized I hadn't really watched any of their matches very closely, and we spent some time watching a couple of their playoff matches and games this past week. And I gotta say, my stocks have dropped quite a bit. Obviously, great aimers, great fraggers, and overall not bad. Like they know how to play to their strengths, right? They're great at fragging, they're great at trading, and you've got a star duelist. So you work around Osmos, and Osmos will carry you quite far. But like before, it was kind of like if I had to pick a dark horse to take the trophy away from one of the favorites, like it would have been MIBR. Now I'm kind of just like, I mean, they could, just because they're so talented, but I'm not really seeing things otherwise. So to me, they're very close to being in the third tier, but just because of how good they are as individuals, and you have Osmos, but it's not just Osmos. Like, it's everybody on this team that's great at fragging, but then you have Osmos on top of that. So I think that alone kind of pushes them above the third tier. Also, I think you have to give credit to Fraud as a coach. I don't know what to expect, but I gotta assume that he's gonna have something cooked to the comfort of his players. He seems to be quite well in tune with that on the rosters that he's been on. So I am curious what they'll do. Personally, I don't think I'm too concerned about, like, some people, again, Verno's another player where people are like, oh, like, Teo's gone. Are they going to be okay? I don't think that'll affect them too much. In fact, I think there's two ways to look at this. Either Teo allowed them to, again, simplify their game plan and focus around the aiming and trading, and so therefore Teo being gone is a nerf to them. But also on the flip side, it could also just be, hey, but now you have, like, maybe you're focusing more on recon, initiators, things like that, where you can really just make sure you're setting up boss, and then maybe that actually makes them look even better. So I think that's a bit of a 50-50 coin toss. But I will put them at trophy contenders. These aren't necessarily in order, but just note MIBR is probably at the bottom of this second tier. So this is where the 9 other teams are for me. How does Pacific stack up against this? We're going to do Paper X first because otherwise I'm going to lose track of the logo. The train. Rumblings on the railroad say that Mini will be continuing to help Paper X once Toronto begins. So with that in mind, you know, he comes back from the ashes of the engine after Sliggy threw him in there like a phoenix, and he's back in the coal room shoveling coal in. Sliggy's back on the, you know, with his conductor hat on, leading the charge. I've been saying this. If that is true, I think Paper X is the best shot for Pacific to lift the trophy. If I had to pick one, I actually think all of the Pacific teams are quite similar in terms of their strength level compared to, in relativity to, the international squads. But I have to say, now I will just say though, like, their performance at ACL was rather worrisome. Like, just all the bad old habits came out the moment Patman wasn't there and Mini wasn't helping, supposedly. So, obviously, yeah, like, you're taking it much lighter, but, like, these are fundamental things that shouldn't have gone away, like, once you figured it out. And, yeah, there was some discipline, but a lot of the things went out the window, and you could see that from the coach cams with Alex getting frustrated. So, and that was a little bit worrisome, but they're like prioritizing Patman's visa. I haven't heard an update yet as of the time of recording this video. So, but let's just assume Patman's going to be there. I think they should be okay. But are they favorites? Well, no, they are. No. So just in terms of overall power, the reason I'm debating this is because of the patch, right? Teo being gone, I think benefits Paper X a lot. I think it benefits them a lot. Double Duelist is going to be stronger. The extra reach whenever you're on attack is going to be great. You're not going to have to worry as much about post-plant stuff. Obviously, people will still figure it out, but it's not going to be as bad. Sunset, back on the menu. Overall, things are pointing in that direction, but I'm gonna keep on trophy contenders because the last time I said everything's pointing in the right direction for Paper X, they bombed out at kickoff. So yes, I know circumstances are different. I do think they are probably Pacific's best hope if I had to pick one team, but if they go back to some good fundamentals, good discipline, the roles they're playing I gotta mention this because I've said it on live streams during the watch parties, but I just want to mention, I think to me the biggest thing is they've been playing to their strengths now, instead of saying like, hey, let's follow the meta, or just like, all right, well, Jing, you're a Raze one trick and something you're a Jet one trick, so we'll just do that. No, but it's more like something op. Do we want an op map? Is it an operator map? We want something on Jet. We want him to be able to op. Or if he's on the Euro, we still want him to be able to op. So that's what we're going to focus around. That's our game plan. But then you've got Raze maps. Okay, Jing is going to be the space creator. We focus on that. If it's double duelist, you each have your own role. Things like that. So to me, the reason that's good is because now we're starting to see logic behind their team comps, instead of this was cool and it allowed us to trade pretty well on the fly, which was not a bad plan and used to work, but I'm just saying that the game has evolved. Let's now go with RRQ, first seed at Pacific, and I knew from the get-go that I was going to put them at trophy contenders. Here's the thing. A lot of people are looking at RRQ and saying, okay, well, they're also kind of like SLG, right? Not much experience internationally. Yeah, you have two players who have been there, but it's been a while for Xfero ever since that Champions run with Boom. And then, Magnet was there. but different team, etc. However, I think RRQ is one of those teams that's actually going to benefit a lot from getting to watch the Swiss stage, because Ewok and Warbirds are both really, really good at prepping ante, and so is Crazy Guy, always has been. And so with that combination, even though you may not have the momentum or you may not be able to shape yourselves throughout Swiss stage, I think getting to see what others are doing, then comparing it to what you're prepping in your own scrims, and then prepping an ante, I think they come out on top. Now, obviously, if you start off slow, like it sucks. You only get 2 chances if you're starting in the playoff bracket. So that's going to be rough for them. But as long as they don't start really slow, which I do think there's a little bit of concern there, depending on the first matchup. But I think their prep is going to be really good. I think they actually might benefit from this instead of kind of like we don't know. Sometimes some teams do, sometimes they don't. For me, RQ, that's a team that benefits from being in the playoffs. Also, I just want to give a shout out to Magnette, because I've kind of harped on it a little bit, building into stage 1, talking about how I think Magnette really needs to be a little bit more self-sufficient, but not overheating. He needs to find that balance. He finally found that balance in playoffs here at stage 1, especially in the grand final. So real props to Magnette, but of course the entire team. And then Jemkin, one of the most highlighted players coming into this tournament. So it should be very, very interesting to see how they manage. So then Gen G, where do they go? I just, disclaimer, I always get this wrong with the Korean team coaches, because I'm always like, well, I feel like they need a little bit of time. And then every single Korean team coach is like, actually, we don't. So I'm always proven wrong about this. But I just think Gen G, while they're very good at just using old things and adapting to a new meta and adapting to what your opponents are doing, I do think they're pretty slow to pick up on new tricks. I think they're pretty slow to pick up on new comps and new metas. So I think they're going to struggle a little bit here. I also wonder, supposedly Ash has talked about how Taeho actually didn't suit him very well. And so he, what we're inferring here, right, is that he should be feeling more comfortable now that Taeho's out of the meta. That's fine. And Foxy9's been popping off, but it does feel like, so I think the pros are they've now worked around getting Ash and Foxy9 in their comfort zones within the Gen G system. That's great. But does that hamper you? Does that limit you? Right? Are you doing certain setups? Are you doing certain patterns just because you have to get these guys comfortable so that they can perform very well individually? Because that could be good enough, because you're a very talented team, to get to like playoffs, maybe in the top 6, but it's probably not good enough to win a trophy, right? You got to be able to adapt a little bit broader and have more options in the playbook. The way they got dismantled in the grand finals was actually really uncharacteristic. I mean, Munchkin just seemed lost in terms of how to adapt to what Crazy Guy was calling. It felt like Munchkin was just in Crazy Guy's palms, and I don't think I've really ever seen that from Gen G, even last year. So I am a little bit concerned there. Also, I feel like Texture sometimes has slow starts as well, as talented as he is. So that's a little bit concerning. I mean, Charon supposedly keeps saying that he's been off his game for all of stage 1, so maybe he'll come back rejuvenated. Foxy9 obviously was playing some of the best Valorant he's had, so I think that will be fine. Firepower will be fine. To me, they're kind of, they're like in between here, similar to MIBR. But just because of the patch change and things like that, and also like they were never a good Sunset team, so I'm going to have to knock them down to playoffs guarantees. So there you have it. This is my tier list. We've got 2 favorites, Fnatic and G2. Then we've got 5 trophy contenders. That's 7 teams that I think can pick up the trophy here, just based on the tier list. So that's already a lot of people. And then you got the 5 other teams. And again, as I said in the very beginning, still a very, very stacked tournament. I actually don't think there's like any really, really bad team, like a complete outlier. Yeah, Wolves is a little bit there, but even then, I think firepower-wise, they should be able to still punch above their weight, depending on the matchup and the given day. So I don't think there's any team where it's like, well, I mean, that's like 100% easy win. I don't think there's anything like that. They're just strongly favored and not so strongly favored. So that's gonna be it. In terms of actual predictions for who I think is gonna win, we'll wait on that one until a couple days before the event. But take a look at this one. Let me know down in the comments below what you think. Let me know who you think are going to be the favorites to win. Give me like 2 or 3 teams that you think are the favorites, but if you have no idea, always leaving a comment down below still helps the algorithm and the channel a lot. So just tell me which team you love in Pacific the most, even if they're not at Masters Toronto. Don't show run first. So I would very much appreciate that. Of course, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing for more videos. And of course, a lot of our watch parties and live streams every day, every week as well. That's going to be it for this one. We will be making a top 10 players list as well for Masters Toronto, so keep an eye out for that. And until then, I will see you next time. Have a good one.